a beautiful morning, and been shooting, a few videos here and there, and really focusing on getting that engine put together. But I realized we haven't even really talked about the car that the engine's going in, so I'm going to fix that today. I'm going to talk a little bit about this 1984 Chevrolet Corvette. Got this thing about 3 or 4 months ago now. Time flies, I know. And bought it as a project. Partly tore apart, but it was exactly what I was looking for. So let's talk a little bit more about this in detail here. We'll kind of do a little bit more of a walk around, get inside, check underneath the engine here, give you guys a run around of it, and see if it makes sense for you to buy something like this and maybe tackle a project like I'm doing. Now, as I said earlier, this is a 1984, and this has a very unique engine in it. It is a 350 cubic inch small block Chevy V8, but it does have a little bit of infamy behind it. It is an L83, and for anybody who's kind of up to date on the new LT engines, the Gen 5s, L83 is it's a pretty cool engine. Makes 355 horsepower. It's got variable cam timing, got air fuel management technology. It's a really cool engine, direct injection. This one, on the other hand, it's the old Crossfire 350, and it was really misunderstood in 82. It would have been in the 83 if they made any of them for production, and for 1984 it was the only engine option you could get. So again, very infamous. Was not a performance engine, frankly, and was the first fuel-injected engine in the 84. So the reason why it's infamous more than anything is because it's a Crossfire injection. It's got cast iron heads, makes 205 horsepower, just shy of 300 foot-pounds of torque, I think. So it's, it's a truck engine, basically. It's got dual throttle bodies, kind of horizontally opposed, kind of like cross ram setup, where it gets its name, Crossfire. The big issue with this one, though, is the intake manifold. That's really the choke point on these engines, and it's actually only 2/3 of the size of the head intake port on them. So yeah, you do get a lot of velocity, but this thing falls flat on its face at about 4,000 RPM. So again, great truck engine if they would have put it in a truck, but it is, it's in the Corvette. This thing should be a high RPM screamer. Not the case. So when I bought this, was not running very well at all, and it might have been running on 6 cylinders, so that's why I actually trailered this home rather than trying to drive it. I did do a tune-up on it, and as you can see over here, this does have the HEI, which makes it pretty easy to work on. So I did put a new cap, rotor, wires, and plugs on this, and it runs pretty good now. Outside of that, it does have the brake light on. I do need to do some research and see why that is. I think I maybe have a stuck caliper too, due to the e-brake system, but it's a real basic setup. And this car also, as you probably can tell, does not have ABS. It's a big advantage. That's why these cars are the lightest of all the C4s. And a big reason why I wanted to look at it and purchase this one. So as you can see here, I took the air cleaner lid off, and you can see the actual throttle bodies here. They look pretty much like every other GM throttle body. They are single bore. So I think combined they flow about 750 from what I hear. The intake manifold is completely wide open underneath it. There is no runners on it, so technically these injectors feed all 8 cylinders. Probably adds again to some of the performance limitations on this. And again, if you're going to buy one as a cruiser, no problem. They're fairly reliable, although the parts are starting to get a little bit expensive from what I understand, and I might even try to sell this after I'm done with it. I'm not sure, but for parts for somebody to use possibly, but mostly again, good cruiser. Not going to be real easy to make horsepower, especially with limited aftermarket support. There were some aftermarket intakes which helped quite a bit, but they're getting very difficult to find and very, very expensive. And again, there's better options out there. like the LS option, which we're going to be running. So this also does have a 1-year only hood on it, where it does have cowl induction that feeds these intakes on the air cleaner lid there. So pretty cool. Just want to kind of do a walk around on it. Definitely a 10-footer. Looks good in the sun, but it definitely is going to need to be reshot. It's got a lot of dings like this, scuffs. It's got some cracks in the fiberglass. The mirrors are a little loose. The glass in these mirrors is kind of not responsive, things like that. More chips here, but the glass is all solid. Do probably have to address eventually some of these alignment issues, especially on this side. Got a big gap there. I do really like the rear ends on these cars. When I was younger, I definitely liked the remodel they did on the C4s. I think these older body style ones actually aged a little better, and especially with the Digi-Dash, pretty cool actually. You can see here, probably hit something, and this has got a fair amount of damage, especially around here as well. Get out of the sun there. See, there's a fair amount of spider cracking, things like that will need to be addressed. And here as well, looks like maybe somebody got hit. Taillights all work though, and they're pretty much perfect, so that's good. Got a big patch here that's going to need to be addressed. And again, for you guys that don't realize this or don't really know much about the Corvettes, this whole thing is made out of fiberglass, so it doesn't really have any metal on it. So if you're looking at these, you're not going to find much rust, which is nice, especially being in the Midwest. This does have the hard top on it. Maybe eventually put a glass top on it, because those are kind of cool. Again, 10-footer. It's going to need some cosmetic work for sure. The thing I do like about this one, it does have the newer wheels on it, the saw blades with brand new tires. I'm not a huge fan of the early wheels and tires, specifically the wheels, being that they're 16-inch, getting a little bit more difficult to find performance-only tires, and pretty limited supply on those. So with the 17-inch, you got a lot more tire options. This actually has the rear rims on the front as well, so it's wearing 275s front and back. Which gives it definitely a little bit more of a stance on cornering especially. And this one also does have the Z51 package, which roughly half of them did. It's not that remarkable. It does ride a lot rougher, but the suspension is very, very, very good for going through the corners and autocross and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool in that regard. Alright, so here you can see some of the areas where you're probably going to need to address if you are going to be putting an LS in these. I don't plan on putting AC in mine. In fact, the blower motor might be about the only thing that I keep. So this will probably get removed, which will definitely add a lot more space for when the swap occurs. So I can get access into the header area, things like that, a lot easier too. So anything I can do to make this fit better, I'm going to take advantage of it, because really my goal with this car, overall goal, is to have around 420 to 440 horsepower naturally aspirated, and get this thing down to about 2,900 pounds. So again, these are the lightest of the C4s, so doing that is not going to be too difficult, especially with some of the things that I'm going to be doing to removing some weight. Front end here, again, got some correction that's going to need to be done. And the hood here is probably, this is the worst spot. This is just bare fiberglass, and it's actually delaminating a little bit, so that's going to need to be addressed at some point. But yeah, got a good cut right there into the body. The headlights both work, which is nice. This one, a little out of alignment, but those are relatively easy to adjust. So that's kind of the exterior of the car. Let's go ahead and take a look at the interior, which is definitely why this car was for sale. All right, if we're going to take a look at the inside here, this is definitely why this car was for sale. So the previous owner started to replace the weather stripping and got about this far, then decided they wanted to replace the carpet as well. So I do have all the parts to put it back together. It does have newer seats in it, which is pretty cool. I don't know how well you can see that in the sunlight, but seats are perfect. Carpet's half installed. So getting back to the story here, so owner was kind of mid replacing weather stripping, and then got started on the carpet and then the seats, and before you know it, the car is pretty well tore apart. Does have the bread box still. I'll be replacing that. It looks a lot worse actually than it really is. The back is full of carpet and weather stripping, so as soon as it warms up, right now it's only about 40 degrees, probably not even, probably closer to 30 actually. I'm going to start putting the weather stripping back into this, because right now I can't even sit outside because it's not weather tight. As you can see up here, it's missing everything. But the good news is you got to tear the whole thing down to this point anyway for the swap. So I'm going to get the weather stripping back in it, get the seats fully installed. Right now the seat bottoms are just kind of sitting there. And then I'm going to get the carpet fully installed on here and get the dash somewhat put back together. Again, I'm going to have to tear it apart to get the Terminator X Max system, which is what I'm going to be using to power this car when it is completed and when it's getting ready to run. All right, so let's get her running. She is cold, and these older cars, the cats got plugged up on them over the years. I'm pretty sure the cat's been cut off of this thing. I haven't crawled under there to check it out yet. Either way, I mean, they're going to be removed once I get the exhaust put on it for the LS, so no big deal. But I bring that up because this thing smells like gas big time when it's running. So it's definitely running rich. So let's get in there. We'll fire it up here real quick. Good oil pressure right off the bat, 54 pounds. The fuel stuff is definitely goofed up though. It says the range is only 31 miles, but it's got half a tank. I hope it's better than that. Oh, 30, and averaging 3.8, so I guess anything's possible. Could be running that rich, but see the brake lights on. These old cars are pretty cool. You do have a bunch of options on here to go down to the oil temperature. Just reads low until it gets to a designated temperature. No volts. 14.3. That's a little low, but that's all right. I got trip, average, instant fuel economy. You can reset them all. It's pretty cool. You can probably tell those injectors are really loud. In fact, I gotta stand back here probably just so you can hear me, but they definitely make a big racket. This cover is actually magnesium. I swear, it just makes them louder. Any new car, I think, will probably have a ton of insulation around it to make it quieter, but it is what it is. It's an 84. Well, this car does have the air pump, which is, it's partly unhooked, and in fact it's just blowing air on the intake. It's not great. You know, that's probably going to have to go here soon if I do want to drive it this summer. But you can see, whoo, a lot of smoke coming out of this thing. A lot of moisture, no doubt, but it's very rich. But it sounds pretty good. I think with the cats removed, the factory exhaust sounds pretty good on it. But I mean, it's a smoke show, and not in a good way. My neighbors, thank God they're used to it, but let's take it for a ride. So the previous owner was actually good enough to install these emergency opening wires. So if this, the way this hood's designed, if the under dash pull cable breaks, basically got to cut a giant hole to open your hood. It's a mess. So with these installed, you can actually just open it from outside. If you want to hide them normally, in case passersby see them, they can open up, mess with your stuff. I don't know how likely that is to happen, but you know, you hear stories. Still cold. 63 pounds of oil pressure, pretty good, and the coolant's at a balmy 151 degrees. The gear selector knob missing, but I find just, oh, there you go. Let's go for a little putt here. Don't want to do anything too crazy. Not that this car has enough power to do anything crazy anyway, but I mean, this thing feels like a go-kart. I'm used to driving much larger vehicles between my truck and my Charger, even the Durango. They make this thing honestly feel like a go-kart, especially with the suspension. Makes it an absolute blast to drive at any speed, frankly. Temperature climbing up, 177 now, 61 pounds of oil pressure still. So this is a healthy engine. It's only got 103,000 miles on it. Do the math, is not much for an 84. Obviously you're not driving it in the winter here in Michigan, but nonetheless still great. Puppy. Flat out, go around a corner. There's 0 body roll. This thing feels like an absolute go-kart, so you can imagine how much better it's going to be once you get a little bit more power in this thing. I mean, effectively doubling the horsepower, getting it probably close to 400 foot-pounds of torque. This thing is, it's going to fly. So this transmission in this thing is a 700R4. I'm going to be replacing that with a 4L60E that's been rebuilt with some stronger internals, actually, that I picked up off of the marketplace. It's computer controlled, which is nice because I will be setting the Terminator X up to run the transmission as well, and drive-by-wire throttle body from the LS6, so that'll be a nice package deal. But this transmission, it shifts kind of rough, and I frankly don't think it would hold up to the horsepower numbers that we're going to be putting out. These really started having issues at about 350 horsepower when I've done research on the early ones, especially. This is the first year for the 700R4, so I'll probably hang on to it. If I do another LS swap into like a Chevy pickup or something like that, it would be a good transmission for that. But you can tell there's a lot of rattles, a lot of squeaks in this thing. I'm thinking a lot of that's going to go away somewhat once I get the interior panels back in it. And again, I'm really trying to keep this thing down to about as light as possible. 2,900 pounds is the goal. And so I don't really want to run too much sound deadening material. That stuff is heavy. But we'll see. We may have to. I'm getting old enough now where I really don't want to drive a race car every single day. We'll get up here and we'll give her a little bit of gas. Again, this is not a fast car, but it does make a lot of noise. Sits a lot. It's probably going to run in a similar condition to this. I mean, I'm a firm believer that if you have a car, you should really drive it. And if it sits for extended periods of time, things dry out, things get gunked up, especially with modern fuels. You know, you really should drive these things. I know it's tough, especially right now. I've been chomping at the bit to really get in and drive this thing, and the weather has not been cooperative, and it's just been too cold. But definitely enjoy these cars, guys, because they're really, really fun to drive. And again, they're made to be driven. Now, if you got something that's really rare, you know, museum quality showpiece car, I can understand the hesitation to drive it. But man, these things are just a lot of fun. And if you can find one reasonably cheap, if you don't own one now, and you can find a cool one, they make really fun drivers, especially like a father-son project, something like that. Just an absolute blast of a car. Pretty much all the new cars you can find are basically the same. Pretty boring, actually, outside of, you know, a few of the newer muscle cars, but, you know, it's really hard to find a car that's got a lot of character these days. So, and the market on these is pretty favorable for the buyers. Seems like the prices on them have kind of gone down a bit. So find one, buy it. Maybe one of the coolest cars you ever get to buy. And I'll tell you what, people will break their necks looking at this thing as you drive by. It's hilarious. The amount of neighbors that stop by. It's a real conversation starter. Well, guys, hope you enjoyed that video. Look forward to making a couple more once it warms up. And we're going to make some about installing the weather stripping, getting that interior back together, because a lot of these cars got a lot of age, a lot of miles. So if you do own one, you're probably going to be doing similar stuff to them coming up. But again, like, subscribe, leave me a comment. Love to hear what you guys are working on. If it's a C4, awesome. If it's an LS swap, cool. If it's anything else, I'd love to hear about it too. But anyway, we'll see you guys next time.